Ski Rio is one of America's largest lost ski resorts. Despite its size, its history is surprisingly short-lived and quite complex. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the history of this well-known lost mountain. I'd also like to thank SRG Skiing for his contribution to the video. Be sure to check out his channel, it's the top link in the description. I would also like to extend my gratitude to ColoradoSkiHistory.com and others for the gracious use of historical photos and resources. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this video. Ski Rio is located in northern New Mexico. The ski area sits directly south of the village of Amalia and is 30 minutes away from the town of Cuesta and 45 minutes away from Red River. The origins of Ski Rio date back to the late 1970s, but to fully understand how Ski Rio came to be, we first need to understand how the Rio Castilla Livestock Cooperative Association, or RCLA, came to be. The Rio Castilla Cooperative Livestock Association was comprised of 171 families. Many of these families were direct descendants of the holders of a massive land grant, which partly comprised Castilla Park. Now, many of these original grant holders lost their land through non-payment of taxes or private sales. However, beginning in 1940, several families had the opportunity to buy back a part of the land and were able to regain control of the Castilla Park. This land was originally leased to the Department of Game and Fish, but when the lease expired in 1975, the cooperative decided not to renew the lease and instead manage the land themselves. In March of 1979, the Rio Castilla Cooperative put up funds to conduct a feasibility study of a new ski area on the privately owned Castilla Park. At the center of this proposal was Richard Gonzalez, who is also the manager of the Rio Castilla Cooperative. By July of 1980, a master development plan for the new ski resort was drawn up. 5 lifts serving 290 acres of skiable terrain were envisioned. Additionally, a skiable village would consist of 224 condo units, 85 single-family homes, and a 200-bed hotel. The entire development would be under a 99-year lease to the RCLA. Despite the grand plans, $7 million were needed to get the resort off the ground, and it was estimated that $40 to $60 million were needed to bring the resort to full build-out. Despite the lack of funds, the RCLA began preliminary run clearing back in 1980. The RCLA formed the Rio Castilla Recreation Development Corporation, which was wholly owned by the RCLA, and it became responsible for the ski area development. In May of 1982, the corporation applied for County Recreation and Development corporate bonds, which totaled around $10 million. Backed with the funds of the bond, development of the ski area rapidly increased. Several temporary buildings were built, and a 12-tower Poma triple chair was installed. Additionally, real estate around the development was offered up for sale. The Poma triple was funded off by a promissory note signed by Poma of America. After a few tight months of construction, the new Rio Castilla ski area was ready for operation. Consisting of a triple chair, platter, 2 chalets, and 14 ski runs, the ski area officially opened on January 15, 1983 to much local fanfare. Despite the development, there was no snowmaking system. Despite the local enthusiasm for the opening of the mountain, Rio Castilla's first ski season was overall a disaster. The ski area's remote location and poor access road, combined with sporadic snowfall, resulted in only 4,137 skier days being recorded. In May of 1983, rumors began to swirl that the ski area was facing foreclosure. Though Gonzalez labeled these charges as absurd, the mountain was put up for sale in July of 1983. The Recreation Development Corporation reportedly held over $1.3 million in debt. $500,000 were owed to Sentinel Bank, and $700,000 were owed to Poma of America, the lift manufacturer. Later that month, Richard Gonzalez and Robert Crawford, who was an executive for Poma of America, purchased the lease to the ski resort. The pair formed Rio Castilla Incorporated. The pair promised to make payments to Poma and Sentinel Bank, as well as smaller creditors. Gonzalez and Crawford also brought on Lawrence Smith as a general consultant. By November of 1983, they announced an opening date. By December, the resort announced intentions to build a $2 million hotel and open a new Pulse gondola in time for the 1984 to 85 ski season. Despite the grand plans put forward, and despite a 1,200% increase in skier visitation numbers, the resort continued to lose money. The 1983 to 84 season only brought in 10,966 skier visits. However, this didn't stop additional development. By November of 1984, 21 new trails were cut and a second Poma triple chair was installed. This triple chair was purchased used from the Deer Park ski area in California and had only operated for one season. It was financed through a loan from Wells Fargo Bank. Additionally, a 40-room hotel was constructed, as well as a restaurant, gas station, and a convenience store. In February of 1985, Poma of America filed a lawsuit against Rio Castilla. The company claimed that the resort had stopped making payments on a $723,000 promissory note it signed with the lift manufacturer back in 1982. Poma requested that the ski area be put in foreclosure and all its assets liquidated. This loan was authorized by Bob Crawford of Poma, who left the company shortly after. Making matters more complicated, Wells Fargo Bank also filed another suit against Rio Castilla, alleging that the ski area was still liable for the money owed on the construction of the new triple. More bad news for the ski area came in May of 1985, when the architectural firm who designed the hotel and lodge sued the ski area for $250,000. After Richard Gonzalez resigned from his position, Bob Crawford assumed the role as the new general manager. Crawford announced that the corporation would reorganize itself and would work to repay the outstanding $1 million it owed to various creditors. Crawford also announced that the resort would proceed with an expansion plan that summer, opening up the upper bowl to lift-serve skiing. However, in the face of new lawsuits, a court ruled that Rio Castilla be auctioned off in a September 18th court sale. Crawford attempted to find European banks that would lend him funds to restructure the resort, traveling to West Germany to do so. Rio Castilla filed for Chapter 11 voluntary bankruptcy hours before the auction, which saved it from being liquidated. Lawrence Smith was swiftly installed as the new general manager by the court. Crawford was dismissed, though since he was in Europe, he reportedly didn't know. Despite the pending bankruptcy, Smith vowed that Rio Castilla would remain open for the coming ski season. By October of 1985, the ski area asked the New Mexico Tourism Board for a $100,000 loan. This loan was approved by the state. Additionally, Bob Crawford announced that he had secured a $2.5 million loan from a West German bank. Despite the bankruptcy, Rio Castilla operated somewhat normally for the 1985 to 86 ski season. However, in an effort to raise capital, the resort sold off much of its equipment. In January of 1986, a Houston-based company called the Bailey Group purchased the Rio Castilla ski area, which was approved by the bankruptcy court. As part of the Bailey Group's efforts to control losses at Rio Castilla, the ski area announced that it would not operate on unprofitable weekdays. The 1985 to 86 season only recorded 6,000 total skier days. After another unprofitable year, the ski area ended up back on the courtroom steps in March of 1986. Poma of America once again seeks to liquidate the mountain for repayment of its original promissory notes. In April of 1986, Mitch Brown, a Californian investor, paid $205,000 for the Rio Castilla ski area, minus the Bravo triple chair and the two surface lifts. Mitch Brown then outright purchased the lifts from Poma. Brown's company, Miracle Mountain Corporation, funded this through several unsecured loans from the Liberty Federal Savings Bank based out of Raton. By the summer of 1986, Liberty Federal Savings Bank foreclosed on Rio Castilla. The bank retained Brown as the general manager and kept on Lawrence Smith as a consultant. With funds from the Liberty Federal Savings Bank, Mitch Brown announced a $3.5 million investment program that would turn the Rio Castilla resort into a premier destination. A used riblet double from Stowe, Vermont was purchased and installed, opening for the 1986 to 87 ski season. This new lift opened up the expansive Cinnamon Bear Bowl to lift-serve skiing and greatly expanded Rio Castilla's offerings. The 1986 to 87 season recorded 23,000 skier days, which became the best in the resort's history. By the summer of 1987, Lawrence Smith began work on developing the Silvertree condos and restaurant, which were owned by him along with several parcels of land in the resort. In October of 1987, in an effort to rebrand itself, Rio Castilla became Ski Rio. Ski Rio operated throughout the 1987 to 88 season. However, in July of 1988, the mountain was put up for sale again. Reportedly, the Liberty Federal Savings Bank was put under orders from the Federal Home Loan Bank to sell the resort, as the bank was not making money on the property. Following this, over half a dozen lawsuits were filed against the bank-owned Miracle Mountain Development Company and against Silvertree Restaurant, which was owned by Lawrence Smith. In October of 1988, federal regulators declared Liberty Federal Savings Bank insolvent. While much of the bank's collapse is outside the scope of this video, mismanagement and fraudulent activity certainly played a big role in the bank's demise. The receivership meant that federal regulators became the new managers of Ski Rio, which had been Liberty National Bank's largest asset. The federal bank stated that the ski area would be operational for the 1988 to 89 ski season, and that they would look after to divest the resorts. Along with new management came a new general manager. The federal government, in search of a qualified management team, also held talks with Copper Mountain and Keystone. Mitch Brown, the former owner of Ski Rio, was also indicted on charges of defrauding an Oregon bank. Lawrence Smith remained at the resort to manage the Silvertree restaurant, which he owned. However, the Silvertree properties were later included in the FDIC takeover. Though Ski Rio experienced record visitation, even experiencing its first lift lines ever, Ski Rio lost money for both the 1988 to 89 and 1989 to 1990 ski seasons. The Federal Asset Disposition Association announced their intentions to sell the resort. While several parties made bids on the troubled resort, in July, a group of Taiwanese investors signed a letter of contract to purchase the resort. However, by September of 1990, the Taiwanese investment group backed out of the deal. They reportedly stated that they were misled on the state of the ski area. Following this announcement, Ski Rio was immediately mothballed by the federal government. The federal government reportedly lost $1.8 million on operating the resort over 2 seasons, and spent an additional $1.5 million in legal and other costs associated with the resort. The closure had devastating effects to the depressed local economy, as it removed over 170 local jobs and over $1 million in wages. Despite petitions and various plans and ways to reopen the mountain, nothing came to fruition. The truth was, Ski Rio had lost money every season it operated, and for a resort of its size, struggled to attract skiers. Though rumors of a sale circulated in late 1991, the sale ultimately fell through. The resort did not operate for the 1991 to 92 season. It was around this time that the FDIC announced intentions to auction off the resort, completely liquidating it. In response to that, the Rio Castilla Livestock Association, who originally developed the resort, put up a $100,000 deposit towards its purchase. However, the Livestock Association wasn't able to find the funds necessary to buy the resort. In February of 1993, the FDIC approved the sale of the resort to Jacques de Bruin, a private developer from Florida. However, the deal fell through after de Bruin was declared in default. By June of 1993, David Hendricks, a real estate consultant from Houston, offered to purchase the resort. By September of 1993, the ski area was sold to Hendricks' company, Magnolia Mountain Limited Partnership, for $1.26 million. Hendricks stated that Ski Rio would not operate for the 1993 to 94 season, but that necessary updates would be undertaken. However, he later decided to operate the resort on a limited basis for the 93 to 94 season. This reopening brought much excitement to the local community and drew fairly large crowds. For the first time in its history, Ski Rio was profitable by a significant margin. Under Hendricks, the resort was able to secure several grants from the state government, which helped fund other improvements, such as a summer mountain bike park. Combined with good winters and increased marketing, Ski Rio was also profitable for the 1994 to 95 season. Hendricks also purchased Pandero Mountain in Colorado and renamed the resort to Cuchara. In June of 1995, Hendricks sold both Ski Rio and Cuchara to Donald and Philip Huffines. The Hendricks brothers signed a $1.5 million promissory note to Magnolia Mountain Limited in June and signed a $2 million promissory note to Ladder Peak Incorporated in September. The 1995-96 season was all around a complete disaster, becoming the worst snow year in over 40 years. By January of 1996, the Huffine brothers began laying off employees, though some already had quit over a payroll dispute. In May of 1996, Ladder Peak filed suit against Ski Rio, seeking to foreclose the resort. Ski Rio stated that it expected to resolve the dispute with Ladder Peak quickly and announced that it would continue to operate for the 1996-97 season. 3 additional lawsuits were also filed against the mountain. Combined, all of these lawsuits seeked close to $3 million from the resort. By September of 1996, Magnolia Mountain Limited, which had previously owned the resort, filed suit to foreclose upon a $1.5 million mortgage held by Ski Rio. Despite some equipment being repossessed, the mountain continued to take reservations for the upcoming season. However, by November of 1996, it was announced that Ski Rio would be auctioned off in a foreclosure sale by early 1997. By December of 1996, it was reported that Ski Rio was late in filing insurance documents. This was followed by several more lawsuits against the mountain. However, these troubles didn't stop Ski Rio from opening on December 19, 1996. The mountain was still operated by Donald and Philip Huffines. On January 1, 1997, a 3 a.m. fire completely destroyed the Silver Tree restaurant. While the blaze was deliberately set, no one was ever charged for the crime. On February 20th, Ski Rio was auctioned off to David Hendricks, the former owner of Ski Rio. Hendricks stated that he would continue to try and find a new owner of the resort, and also stated intentions to have the resort sold by the summer. Hendricks stated that if the mountain was not sold by the winter, he would not open it again. By September of 1997, JNC Properties, headed by John Lau, purchased the second mortgage lien on Ski Rio, originally held by Ladder Peaks Corporation. JNC Properties stated intentions to have both Kuchara and Ski Rio operational. Thus, Hendricks announced that the mountain would operate on a limited basis for the 1997-98 season. Ski Rio did not end up losing money for the 1997-98 season and boasted good snow conditions. The resort operated regularly for the 1998-99 season, though a poor winter forced it to close early. Ski Rio operated for the 1999-2000 season, though an extremely poor winter forced the resort to close on Monday, January 17, 2000. The resort announced pre-purchase lift tickets would be valid at sister resort Kuchara. By July of 2000, Ski Rio and Kuchara both suspended all summer operations. Both resorts insisted that they were planning on reopening for the ski season. However, by August, John Lau announced that Ski Rio and Kuchara might not open for the winter. By November, Lau announced intentions to sell off Kuchara to another Texas-based developer, pending U.S. Forest Service approval. However, Lau stated that Ski Rio would not operate for the 2000 to 2001 ski season. Ski Rio sat closed for the 2000 to 2001 ski season. However, the ski resort announced that it would operate on a limited basis for the 2001 to 2002 season. Ski Rio sold several ski vacation packages to multiple groups on this basis. However, by November of 2001, the resort's phones were disconnected and the buildings completely abandoned. Unsurprisingly, the people who had purchased Ski Rio vacation packages filed complaints with the Attorney General's office. After much back and forth, Ski Rio eventually agreed to refund cash to customers. By April of 2003, Ski Rio Partners Limited was listed as a defendant in foreclosure proceedings filed by Magnolia Mountain Limited. Ski Rio continued to sit completely abandoned and unused. In 2008, the mountain was put up for sale and sold later that year for $6.5 million to Cymex Invest Incorporated, a company based out of the Czech Republic. They hinted that skiing may eventually be brought back and rebranded the resort to Endless Blue. However, in 2009, Endless Blue sold both Poma Triples and the Beginner Platter to Ski Lifts Unlimited, which in turn sold the lifts to East Coast ski areas. They also tore down multiple hotel structures and the base lodge. By January of 2010, Endless Blue Resorts introduced cat skiing on the former slopes of Ski Rio. Today, Ski Rio sits much as it did when it shut down in 2000. Unlike Kuchara, there seems to be no plans on the eventual reopening of the mountain, and it seems extremely unlikely that it would ever happen. To discuss exactly how Ski Rio would have skied as a mountain, I'm going to bring in Shoutout Garrett from SRG Skiing.
Thanks for having me. Let's go ahead and start off in the base area, where the skier would have had a choice of 2 chairlifts. These 2 triples, named A and B, were also sometimes referred to as Alpha and Bravo. It remains unclear if C was ever called Charlie, or if that just remained as the C chair. All of the chairs were fixed grips, and their ride times were painful. I estimate A as taking 6 minutes, B taking 8 minutes, and C taking a whopping 12 minutes, and all of those times were without stops. Naturally, it would seem that B would be the busiest lift at Ski Rio as it serves most of the mountain. However, having seen the clientele attracted to Red River and Angel Fire in the modern day, I'm willing to bet that, by far, the longest lines at Ski Rio belong to the A chair. A chair, as you can see, served all of these greens here, all of which were nice, wide, gentle, and groomed. Up above, you can see both on this trail map and on this satellite view that runs were cut and ready to go for an expansion. This would have had some of the steepest trails at Ski Rio, and most likely would have been their signature mogul pod, but unfortunately, that dream was never realized. Of course, compounding the whole financial difficulty thing was this absolute disaster of a trail map. If I were to ask you to explain the area right around the top of Bravo, I doubt anybody who never skied there would be able to, but here's my best bet. From the topographic view, it would appear that Dismissed ran away from B, dropping beginner skiers onto Footloose. This trail would have been extremely flat, although quite short. Now, on the contrary to Dismissed, Solitaire ran from Footloose and ended at the bottom of C. To access C from the top of B, skiers would have had to push along a relatively flat catwalk, denoted by this dashed line, to get to Solitaire or Aspen Run, both of which were most likely nice green groomers. In all likelihood, Nieve Sol was bumped up, as it is just a short offshoot of Aspen Run. Within the Bravo pod itself, you had these 2 blues, Hold Me Back and Racer's Edge, which I assume were the main cruisers in this part. Silver Bullet was the main terrain park, and then in and around the rest of the pod there are a bunch of shorter runs, some of which would have been groomed, but most which would have been left to get moguled. I suspect Footloose got quite congested, as it appears to pretty much just be a road, but it was the main green route down from the B pod. On the opposite side, Coaster, the other main green, has this super cool little feature halfway down, where it widens out significantly and opens up. The green road continued around the skier's left side, but the skier had the option to drop into any of the steeper parts of the bowl to shortcut that and get some fun, lower level off-piste experience. Conquistador was quite narrow, steep, and was most likely ungroomed, and in turn, one of the hardest runs at the resort. I suspect that of the 3 lifts, C was the only one that didn't get any lines ever, mostly due to the more advanced runs it served. While I doubt the G lift ran that often, it served some of the best mogul runs at the resort. When it wasn't operating, I suspect the hike to this terrain on the looker's right side of the resort would have been worth it just for the isolation. I have to assume that Federal Express was the signature black groomer at Ski Rio, while the rest of these upper mountain blues were on rotating grooming. The trees get thinner towards the top of the mountain, so there would have been good lower level tree skiing up here. Freeway wasn't as flat as it looks, but definitely still had some points of skating or pushing. These blues would have been some of my personal favorites, I suspect, if I had been able to visit Ski Rio. The downside of these is that they required 20 plus minutes of lift rides on B and C to lap, but their length and just general cruisiness, if you will, is what made them special. In my opinion, these would have been some of the best runs at the resort. The trees on this side are quite dense, so I don't think there was much tree skiing over here. Ski Rio had a little bit of everything. Albeit somewhat like Angel Fire, one of my personal least favorite mountains, its design was definitely suitable for their lower level clientele while still offering good options for advanced and expert skiers. Any resort going under is unfortunate, but seeing the potential in the terrain and footprint of Ski Rio, its loss is particularly difficult. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Shoutout Garrett of SRG Skiing, and now, back to Skier 72.
Ski Rio had many issues that plagued the resort throughout its short life. Mismanagement, corruption, and snowfall to name a few. But Ski Rio's fundamental problem was that it was almost never able to make a profit. At the end of the day, Ski Rio completely failed at being a successful business, despite numerous owners and attempts. It's a fascinating story, but it looks like Ski Rio will never be a lift-served ski resort again. I'd like to once again extend a huge thank you to Sean Ray Garrett from SRG Skiing. Be sure to check him out for more high-quality skiing content. Also, a big thank you to ColoradoSkiHistory.com and others. And again, thanks for watching The Lost Resorts. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And until next time, this is Skier72.